What's good, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today, I will be discussing my 2024 All NBA picks for first team, second team, and third team. And I'm joined here today with my guy, Derek Stein. Very good dude, watches the game, loves hoops. I love hoops. You love hoops. So tap in for this conversation. I had to re-record the beginning because the audio file got corrupted, but I appreciate you guys. Without further ado, let's get right into introducing our All-NBA teams. And go tap into Derek. He has a podcast called Not Just Dribble. The links are in the description. While you're down there, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let's run it. Let me know who your first team is, Derek.
All right, man. First team, All-NBA first team. Let's get the three obvious out of the way. Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Luka Doncic are on my All-NBA first team. I would be shocked if they're not on everyone's. The other two spots I think are where things could be swayed, mostly between three, maybe four guys. But for me, I ended up going with Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks and Jalen Brunson of the New York Knicks as my fifth guy.
Woo! So, okay. Yeah. I like it. So, this is hilarious. For my first team, I have pretty much the same exact All-NBA team. The question for me was between Tatum and Brunson.
Yep, just the same for me.
And I really struggle with this because while I think you can argue that Brunson might have had a more productive season, I feel like what Tatum provides for the Boston Celtics and for the amount of games that they've won, I feel like he's been a key force on two sides of the ball. Plus, totally. Post All-Star break, I think Tatum really picked it up compared to what he had started from. But Jalen Brunson definitely deserves to be in this conversation. I wound up choosing Tatum specifically because of all the games Boston won. But Brunson definitely has an argument. I'm not mad at that at all, honestly.
Yeah, look, it was me staring at my notes on my phone for a while and going back and forth on productivity, which both of these guys had. Obviously, I think the bigger surprise would be Brunson for how successful it's been.
Yeah.
The Knicks are the bigger surprise team, but to your point, 64 wins. Celtics been clearly the best team all regular season. Tatum's a big reason why. But I was so torn because I'm like, as far as who has been the more valuable player, I think it's clearly been Brunson compared to their teams. And for the Knicks to get the second seed, and he is easily the most important offensive player to that squad. They've been missing, they missed Anunoby for 20 games. They've missed Randall for, I think, close to 40. Tatum has a huge supporting cast around him. It's not to say he hasn't hooped. It's just a matter of he's got more help than anyone else. And not that this should factor in, because, look, what's done is done. But Brunson has been vindicating and validating himself, vindicating me for the pick, but validating himself in the playoffs. Now, you could say the Sixers suck. Be my guest. That's fine. Maybe you're right. But Tatum has not had a good playoff series against a Miami Heat team that is simply not at full strength. So, again, look, that really shouldn't play into this. That's fine. But I just think looking back on this season, Jalen Brunson is the player that's going to stand out more, and that's why I think he's deserving of this spot on All-NBA first team.
Yeah. For me, what made me have a hard time with this is I feel like with all the injuries that the Knicks have sustained, Jalen Brunson being the lead guard that was already the best player on his team, but he got even better this year where he upped his volume with his three-point shooting, and he's just been a very productive guard in terms of scoring and all that. And I feel like that elevated the Knicks to where they were able to steal the number 2 seed, which is very significant for this Knicks team. A lot of people might not have had them even make it the playoffs in their 2 seed. So I hear that. For me, the impact numbers with Tatum, I think what makes it hard for me is I feel like he started out his season a bit wonky with trying to play with Jrue Holiday, Jaylen Brown, KP, but he was still playing at a pretty high level. But post All-Star break, that's really when I think things for Tatum started to click a lot more, where he was shooting nearly 45% from three. And it's like, do I give Jalen Brunson the nod because he's more valuable for the Knicks, or do I give Tatum the nod because I know the level he's able to get to and the sheer amount of dominance playing with good players? I feel like it's hard for Tatum to put up the numbers he's having on that Knicks team, on that Celtics team, when you know that like you have 4 players who can have 20 points on any given night. And I feel like the two-way ability of Tatum and how his defense really picked up again in the second half, I feel like that's what made me narrowly edge Brunson off of my first team. But make no mistake about it, man. I love Jalen Brunson. What he's doing right now in the playoffs versus your Philadelphia 76ers, by the way, he's been hooping.
Yeah, absolutely has. I think, what to your point, it's like Tatum struggled early only because he was trying to adjust to other guys. But those other guys are former All-Stars. And obviously it wasn't that much hardship given the fact that they had more 20 or 30-point leads this season. I'm forgetting the numbers, versus having 10-point deficits.
Wild.
I remember that was one of the craziest stats. I think it was 20 points. More 20-point leads than 10-point deficits. That's insane to try and fathom and put into like an 82-game sample. So, look, no surprise. Tatum, I think, moves clearly onto second team. Not that far of a drop-off. Man, still getting paid. I don't feel that bad about it. Giannis was another guy, man, that I thought like he could have swayed with Tatum as well, just because the Bucks' success wasn't all there this season. I just don't there's obviously no argument to me as far as Jokic, SGA, Luka, their production and where their teams fell, I think kind of stand by themselves. But Giannis, man, I mean, look, they fell to 3. They got, to your point, the Knicks took the second seed. But the Bucks, like, could have fallen to 4th if Cleveland didn't kind of tank to get Orlando. So, I don't know. It was, look, Giannis had Giannis numbers once again. It's kind of unfair how easily overlooked they are. But he was another guy I kind of went back and forth with him and Tatum as far as who's getting that last spot. Because I think Brunson has an amazing narrative on top of his production. But, I mean, with that, we should just probably move on to second team, right? Yeah. Like,
real fast, before we make that push, I do just want to give some numbers. I wrote this down in my phone, and this is what made me ultimately choose Tatum. Pre-All-Star break, he played 52 games where he averaged 27 on 47 from the field, 36 from 3, 82% from the free throw line, right? Post All-Star break in 22 games, he averages 26 points per game, 46 from the field, 40.9% from 3 on 7.8 attempts, with the defense also peaking up. So that's what gave me the edge. But yeah, man, this second team, listen, this people, this is where this conversation becomes a bit hard, I would say. So I'm interested to hear who you have on your second team, Derek.
Yeah, this is where like all my I've garnered as like a respectable hoops head is probably about to go out the window to some. Look, so Tatum's here. I think that's pretty easy. Anthony Edwards is here. I think that's pretty easy. Kevin Durant is here. Also felt pretty good about that. Kawhi Leonard is here.
Okay.
And I think that could be up for some dispute. But the guy that I'm going to catch the most flack for, and deservingly so, because pre-pod I was saying, like, look, man, I don't know. I didn't feel great about him being here to begin with, but after the play-in, it definitely doesn't look good now. But Domantas Sabonis. Domantas Sabonis is here on All-NBA second team. And look, it's a regular season award. Well, I'll let you get yours off, and then we'll talk about it. But Domantas Sabonis is the 5th guy on All-NBA second team for me this year.
Okay, man. My list for second team, I have Jalen Brunson. I have Kevin Durant. I have Anthony Edwards. And these last 2 names I felt iffy on, but I looked at like their sheer value to their team with their play this season and the consistency and the games played. I have Kawhi Leonard and I have Anthony Davis. Those are my guys. Now, I definitely understand the winning aspect for some of these other teams, but I feel like Anthony Davis's level of production, he's not going to win a DPOY this year. I do believe that there have been better defenders, but I think in terms of his scoring and his defense this season, on the amount of games played, he's just been very, very dominant. Right. And I think in any other season, if you just ignored wins, you could talk yourself into this guy is like a first team caliber type of guy. But obviously with the wins and how up and down their season has been, I couldn't give it to him. But I really feel like it's been super impactful for LA this year. It's been an up season. And more importantly, for Anthony Davis to play 70 plus games, you just don't expect that at all from him. And he was able to do that. So I have him here. Kawhi was the tough one because he only averaged 23 points on paper. Mm-hmm. But if you watch the games after his tough start to the season, the way Kawhi was playing alongside Harden and Paul George was ridiculous. He was like, at one point, I'm pretty sure he was having like a 50, 40, 90 stretch, and they were dominating and cruising through teams. And the impact numbers, the shooting, the metrics, all of that leaned heavily towards Kawhi being really one of those great guys this season. On top of his defense making a drastic improvement at the halfway point of the season. I kind of wanted to drop him off almost because he did miss the tail end of the last games, but I still feel like that stretch from him was really indicative of just how good of a player he still is when healthy. So I wound up keeping him. But yeah, Anthony Davis and Kawhi Leonard, those are my two guys.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way.
He's good. So, I mean, you know.
Oh, yeah. I don't think we have to talk about Ant. Look, I mean, again, we talked about it before.
Oh, you're cooked.
Before Cleve was talking about his MVP candidates, and Anthony Edwards was actually his fifth guy, not Jason Tatum, which I was like, do I really want to get nasty? Anthony Edwards has, I think, a ton of a case, I guess, like a great case for even All NBA first team. I obviously clearly didn't go that far, but I think he's a shoo-in for second team. I think he's been fantastic all year. Tatum, we've already discussed. Durant, look, his production's been great. We can talk about the Phoenix Suns kind of falling apart. Predicted as much, but they can't take away from his individual success. And Durant was one of the few reasons that team had a chance. Was able to have like good stretches throughout the season. So I think he's a no-brainer. Kawhi, to your point, statistically doesn't look amazing from just raw box score numbers. But I think he was a two-way player, super available, super crucial to a Clippers team that did finish 4. Yeah. Like, 4th in the West is an accomplishment by itself. He's got help, but I don't know. Kawhi's availability in the regular season was great. It's a shame about what happened in the playoffs. Yeah, man, Sabonis, look, Sabonis was me trying to give the Kings some credit for being forgotten so quickly, competing in the West as well as they did. And to me, Sabonis was the one guy out of the pairing of him and Fox who didn't really slump at any point in the regular season. Like, Fox started off shooting incredible to start this year. He was looking like top 5 guard-ish through the first 15, 20 games. Then he kind of came back down to earth and was still very good. I think was, almost all-star caliber, or at least all-star caliber. Obviously didn't get picked. The West is just so deep. But he did kind of like follow the law of averages or have some like slow stretches. Sabonis never really had that. Was the best rebounder in the league all season. Was a solid or a very good paint finisher. And then I get it, maybe a DHO merchant, pistol action merchant, but he's the hub for that Sacramento Kings offense that was still really good this year. Obviously missed Malik Monk to down the stretch. That may have impacted them in the play-in. And that's what hurts, man, because the last thing we've seen of the Kings is the disappointing end of their season. So that's what's going to sour people even more on Sabonis than the reputation from last year's playoffs that he had, where he didn't show up. The thing we talk about the most from that series is Draymond caving in his chest, and he was terrible. Like, Sabonis was completely nullified.
He got rebounded by Looney too, and all that. Yeah,
right. Looney outplayed him. Green outplayed him, and so it was just really, really frustrating from that perspective. That's like, man, I really was hoping he'd earn it, but it's like, okay, then he goes and kind of lays an egg again. It's like, all right, now we're questioning what the Kings are even going to be. Can you even succeed with the Fox and Sabonis pairing, or is Sacramento just happy?
Yeah, like,
oh, they're not. To me, that's 100%. Malik Monk's gone. Shoot, he's going somewhere. He's coming east, I think, as far as I'm concerned. I think that's just all but set in stone. But yeah, man. Look, maybe I was just too high. I don't feel bad about Sabonis making All-NBA team. Realistically, he should have been third, but I stayed pat on it. That's why I wanted to cheat earlier, but I didn't. I was like, look, let me give credit. Dude had a great season. It just didn't end well. So that's why it doesn't look so good now.
Wow. I'm telling you, man, the second team stuff took me a very long time. I had to really think to myself, like, how good are all these players? And again, when I looked up Anthony Davis's productivity for the full season, especially how they ended out their season where they were really making that run, like, he was playing out of his body. And again, the games played, if AD playing 70 games sounds like I lied to you. And it's like, really played that many games. So yeah, those are my two. Now this third team, I really want to see what this sounds like for you.
Okay.
I'm extremely curious because I know mine's is gonna have a lot of controversy. I'm letting you know that right now.
That's fair. Look, I think there's All-NBA third team was tough because you get stuck with a bunch of guys that are clearly deserving, but also maybe had flaws to their season to some degree. Some guys went on slumps, whether it was injury, just, not so great shooting. Maybe they just weren't invested defensively. And then, of course, the team success thing, which I'm looking at this now and I'm like, man, I really got specifically two guys, actually low-key three that did not succeed from a record standpoint, but they still were so individually good, and they're not really the reasons why their teams didn't succeed. So I don't know. Maybe I'm partial to the old guard because Steph Curry and LeBron James are here for me on All-NBA third team. Steph Curry did have a down year by his standards very easily. I'm sure you'd agree. And the Warriors obviously not the end of the season that you wanted. Really not the year you wanted at all. Very, very frustrating given that team was mostly healthy, but just couldn't really ever click, it seems, throughout the year. But he was just too good to not give him credit. LeBron James, I don't know. Do I have to make much of a case? The case against him obviously is the record, right? Like the Lakers did disappoint ultimately, but he was so stinking good. And he's 39 doing this, like, incredible production. Still the real offensive hub for this team, not Anthony Davis. It still starts and ends with LeBron. You just hope AD can do his part, and he did, to finish it, but this team goes absolutely nowhere. This is a lottery team without LeBron. So that mattered a lot. And then his teammates here too. Anthony Davis is on my third team.
He made it. Okay.
He made it. Like, that's the thing, right? For all the reasons you mentioned for him being second team, I didn't feel good about putting him second team because of the success factor. And it's like something always just felt like was missing for AD this year. Yeah, man. Look, Anthony Davis, still a great defensive player. I just looked at the defensive success of the team, and normally he's been able to influence the defensive rating, defensive metrics, and overall the wins. I feel like in previous years where he didn't do it quite as much this year. Again, West is super competitive, and he's still making an All-NBA team. I guess my hang-up, of course, is, and it's a valid complaint, it's like, how do you have two guys on a play-in team in here? And, is there Lakers bias? And it's like, I don't think there really is. I'm looking at two guys that just had outstanding production and are routinely in the conversation for top 10, top 15 players. And that's kind of what I'm seeing here. But it was tough. It wasn't easy to put these guys here because there's other deserving players. All this to get to the last two guys. They both happen to be guards. Devin Booker is here. And I'm not thrilled about it. I'll be honest, not a Devin Booker fan. Ultimately, I think he's a frustrating watch on the court. But again, that's just personally speaking. He's obviously a fantastic player, elite scorer. I think took on the playmaking role as best he could this season. Obviously, in the playoffs, it didn't look super pretty, but I give him a lot of credit for doing his best in a not great situation. He was obviously missing his guard companion, backcourt mate for a good chunk of the season in Bradley Beal.
Oh, yeah.
And aside from KD, I'll give Grayson Allen credit. Grayson did have a very good season. Like, he didn't have a ton of help, is the bottom line. He did a lot. He did a lot offensively. He carried his fair share. He carried his weight. And defensively, I think he was okay. I think he was at least an average defender throughout the season. So, very great offense, solid defense. That's fine. So he's here. I don't feel that bad about it, but it's I don't love it either. And then my last guy is Tyrese Halliburton, who.
Wow. Okay.
So he's the player I figured we'd have to talk about. Look, Halliburton went through a slump. Let's address that real quick. Tyrese got injured. It was either mid-January, late January.
Yeah, something like that.
And it completely affected his game. Like 100%. He was not the same player for the following 2-ish months. Arguably, you could say he hasn't gotten back to what he was pre-injury. But pre-injury, he was having a top 10 season, having a top 10 current players season. Averages of 25 and 11, fantastic efficiency. I think a top 5 best watch in the league. Not a real metric, but he just became my favorite player to watch. The ability to control the floor and operate with so few mistakes, seemingly, was great. He turned the Pacers into an incredible offensive squad to the point that they're a playoff team with easily the worst defense to be in the playoffs. He obviously doesn't get Siakam until later. So, look, I just see a fantastic season and a deserving player. Again, he went in the slump, but his team succeeded. The other thing here, and we'll address it, this is obviously not something that we have to worry about as we're not official voters currently, but Tyrese's money's at stake here too.
It is.
So it stinks to think this way, but by not making All-NBA team, by not making All-NBA team, that would affect his future paycheck, which is kind of unfortunate. That it has to be thought like this. And many official voters are thinking this way as well. Zach Lowe, of course, removed himself from being on the ballot as a voter because he had said he doesn't like affecting guys' contracts. That it's kind of unfair that the media gets to decide how much you're worth in the eyes of a team just off of our opinions. Yeah. So I have to, it's not fair to consider that at the same time, but it is a real factor in real life for other voters. But I just think Halliburton did way too much this season to get passed up, despite some guys that were, I think, hot on his tail near the end. But yeah, that's my 5 in a vacuum here. Yeah, that's my 5. That's all NBA 13.
All right. So controversy is going to be here, but I'm ready to stand by my list here. I will start with my first pick. So my first pick is LeBron James. LeBron continues to wind back the clock. He played phenomenal this season, man. Offensively, he's posted some of his most efficient splits for the past 5 or 6 years. The playmaking was there all year long, and he actually played a lot of games. A lot of people at this age probably would not be this level of productive at all, but also the amount of games played with that productivity, you really wouldn't find that as much. So I feel like LeBron had to make it this year. I'm sorry, but for me, I really wanted to get 2 All-Stars from this team. The Celtics are just too good of a team to me this year. And more importantly, the work I saw Jaylen Brown put in on his game, where he started out struggling, not knowing how to fit in, how to play off Porzingis, and then seeing how Jaylen Brown closed out his year for the Celtics, where he became their best POA guy, which is crazy because I came out here saying that Jaylen Brown was the most inconsistent guy on defense, but to close out the year, he stepped it up to a significant rate. His scoring went up, his efficiency had gone up, and even his playmaking in spots, like his overall process as a player got better. Yeah, so
for sure,
I want to give him some love. And again, this is an all-time team to me in terms of net rating and games won. Like they've blown multiple teams out by 50 points. As a Warriors fan, seeing them blow us out by that much, like I really feel like 2 All-Stars is justified based off how dominant they've been. So I picked Jaylen Brown. Steph Curry is my next guy. I'm a Warriors fan, so I watched every bounce of it. He almost didn't make my list, but then I really had to think about, this is a down year for Steph in terms of twos, but his clutch numbers the entire year really put him in this conversation because of how effective he was at closing down games. And more importantly, he played 70 plus games. And it's wild to say that for Steph Curry, a guy that always has problems somewhere, but he got hurt and pretty much played effectively the majority of the season. And to see him do that with, he's still shooting highs from 3 where no one is even close in terms of his 3-point shot making on such bad quality. That to me still puts Steph here. Also, how I view it, Derek, is I don't look at the play-in after. I say the season ended before you go into the play-in.
Right.
What do I think of you?
Yep.
And you know, based off of that, Steph was really giving it his all. Also, he had a very bad situation of teammates with Draymond being suspended and a lot of things happening, but Steph still played at a all NBA level to me. All right. Now, these last 2 spots, Ben. My first player I have is Domantas Sabonis. Now, I almost didn't have him on this list, but what he did for the Kings, where De'Aaron Fox, I still believe, is the best player on the Kings, this season it was Sabonis. With his floor raising, the rebounding numbers are absolutely insane. The games played is just ridiculous. And the DHO offense that he brought, I mean, the Kings needed that to have any success. And on a night-to-night basis, he gave you consistent productivity. Do I think there's better players than him? Sure. But in terms of what he was able to produce for the season and do for the Kings all the way through and through, especially when Fox had his slumps, I think he deserves to make all NBA this year. So he's on my third team. Now, the final guy is a guy that's not going to make a lot of all NBA teams. Okay? He's a defensive player.
Yeah.
But
I knew it.
I got to give it to him. Rudy Gobert is my last pick for all NBA. And I had to think to myself, like, why would he make it? And I still feel like what Rudy Gobert did as a defensive player of the year, you know, in my opinion, really brought Minnesota a ton of success. And more importantly, his defensive numbers since 2021 are very similar in terms of productivity. And also, he played better by his standards offensively. And I think for that Minnesota team, they really needed that impact to have success and to have a big turnaround. And I personally feel like because of that impact that he brought, he actually has the wins and he made the sacrifices on that team for them to have success. So I have Rudy as my last pick.
Yeah, look, man, I don't hate that at all. If anything, it made me look at my list and be like, man, why in the world? Look, I think Rudy's deserving. I mean, you mentioned the team success. The stretch that Cat was out, we saw what looked like a more natural offense from the Wolves. And to Gobert's credit, this probably was his best offensive season, at least from a consistency standpoint. There wasn't nearly as many flubs like we've seen in Utah for many years, where he's got bricks for hands that seemingly cannot catch despite the enormous size. But he was fantastic. He was an antidote to the Wolves for so many things. And for an already good defensive team, he took them to beyond elite. This is, I mean, if this run really continues, they'll quite easily be in best upper echelon defenses we've seen in the last 20 years. This team has the potential to go down as like a 2019 Raptors defense. They'd have to win it all to get the mystique of like a Detroit Pistons defense,
of course,
or a Spurs defense. Obviously, you need to, you got to get the crown to be considered that highly. But he's been fantastic. I'm really not mad at it. It makes me think like, you know what? I didn't give Gobert his flowers for most of the season. I need to start. The same reason I didn't have him as DPOY. The main factor for me was how much help he had on that ends. And we got to see it in the playoffs as well as the regular season. Jaden McDaniels has been fantastic. If it wasn't for Gobert, he'd be the best defender on that team, and he'd be the best defender on a lot of NBA teams. He's been great. Anthony Edwards committed to defense. He's been great. Kyle Anderson off the bench. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, fantastic. Conley still giving you solid minutes. So there's just a sea of helpful players in Minnesota, and that's kind of why I was like, do I really give it to a guy who is the centerpiece to that, but has so much help holding him up? So that's why I was torn, but I really don't hate that pick. Sabonis, I mean, for all the reasons you said, it's why I had him as high as second team. In hindsight, probably would have had him third, but yeah, I mean, we don't really disagree on a lot. I guess the first question I got to ask is, was it really post-injury Halliburton is what made you take him off your list?
Yes. And I looked into his numbers. He shot 30% from three for the rest of the season. And I was watching the games, and he just clearly did not have that same type of burst. It felt like he was just playing the games to be able to still qualify, but if the rule wasn't in place, he probably would have missed more time. Even after they traded for Pascal Siakam, I remember they brought him back to play in his debut game, and then he sat out the next 5 games. So clearly to me, like, he finished out his season injured, and I just felt like as dominant as he was to start the year, to close out the year in that way when I'm seeing other players in a harder conference like fight and still have to play at a high level to even, make the play-in or make the playoffs. I felt like it wasn't fair to put him on there for the first half compared to how he closed out the year. So to me, that was really the main overall difference maker. Had that stretch not happened, I'm pretty sure he'd probably be first team for me, if anything. He was outstanding, but the drop-off was kind of considerable. Also, I respect Devin Booker. I do, but I just feel like his season was kind of shaky. He had moments where he was great. He also had games that he missed, but I just feel like I've already given players their respect in terms of not winning that many games. Suns had a very underwhelming season overall by their standards. A lot of people expected this team to be a bit higher, and the Suns just weren't that good even when they had all three of their guys by the numbers. And also, they were like the worst fourth quarter team in basketball for the most part of the season. So me really factoring in all of those things, I felt like Gobert really, really deserved his credit. Because, bro, from the beginning of the season to the end, Minnesota was always the number one defense. And I understand the aid in terms of defensive help that Gobert had. But the reason why that didn't bother me as much is partially because of Gobert's reputation. Like, me knowing that at his apex, he was able to floor raise defenses that didn't really have help. I knew that he could impact it. And also last year, their defense wasn't nearly at all exactly what it was this year. And to me, a lot of that is year one Gobert trying to, buy in and find out exactly what to do. The year two Gobert improvement is the biggest difference, in my opinion, for why they are where they are. Because even when Cat was out last year, their defense didn't jump up quite how you wanted it to. It was a really off year for Gobert. I think this year he really corrected that, and you saw the team change a lot because of that. So that's why I have my team. Now Sabonis is tough because I feel like he has flaws. I feel like there's definitely 15 players I can name better than Sabonis, but the productivity and the games played, I feel like I really could not ignore, especially in a tough Western Conference.
Yeah, no, I completely hear that. I completely agree. Jaylen Brown was first off my list. I mean, we can, it's maybe can't see that, but look, I'm just saying it's there.
Okay.
All the reasons you said. I mean, in hindsight, I should have rewarded the Celtics a bit more. Still feel fine about keeping Tatum where he was, but Brown should be here in place of. I would probably put him in front of Booker, honestly, for all the reasons you said. His numbers didn't really jump or improve all that much, but there's a very clear reason as to why, as far as adding guys like Porzingis and Holiday into the mix and just being so dominant, not having to play in nearly as many crunch time minutes given all the blowouts. So he doesn't get to inflate those stats nearly as much. And I do think he was a more confident playmaker at times, at least kept his head up more often.
Yeah.
Certainly a willingness to play in that system. And then, to your point, the on-ball defensive reps that he got this year in place of a guy like Drew Holiday or in place of a guy like Derek White, who still were very good defenders, obviously, and succeeded in their roles. But JB really was like an absolute problem for a ton of high usage guys this year because he got to put his athleticism on display so well, but he was so under control at the same time. So while he may not be the off-ball defender we all want him to be, he doesn't have to be with this team, and he's just done so well on ball that he's carved out another role for himself.
Yeah.
And I think there's a clear argument that he had the most growth of any Celtic, is certainly in the starting five all season. So completely valid to give him credit. Obviously, the team was super successful as well. So having two guys make All-NBA team isn't a hot take at all. Rewarding success is not a bad thing. So, yeah, man, I feel good about the list. The only other guy that was here that could have made it with games played, Maxey, had consideration. Yeah. I think the team success is ultimately why I left him off as well. But I've seen a lot of NBA voters give him love. I think Tim Legler put him All-NBA second team.
Wow.
Which was insane to me. It's very high praise. And he's obviously been sensational in the playoffs. But I think next year is going to be Maxey's, trot out All-NBA year. So shout out to him. I feel for guys like Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell, who definitely would have been contenders for these lists, but games played obviously hampered them. So those are the couple of guys I had just off the list that didn't make the cut, but were definitely contenders. I'll be honest, I was half expecting you, if it wasn't for Gobert, to almost say Victor.
I really, Derek, I don't think you understand how close I came. I held myself back because, I'm sorry, the way Wemby ended the season was just a ridiculous dominance to the point where he beat the Denver Nuggets, like willed that team to victory, and ironically, he's the reason why OKC became the 1 seed.
Right.
That's the other context too, by the way. The three teams at the top of the West, 1 through 3, were like a game separated, if that, from each other. And to me, that's why the Wolves having 2 All-Stars isn't crazy when you consider just how close that Western Conference battle was.
For sure.
Also, the growth part that you said about Jaylen Brown, 100% facts. Because again, you know how hard I can be whenever Jaylen Brown comes up. But seeing the growth he took, I mean, he jumps from 22 points per game to 25.6 points per game post All-Star break on 51% from the field, 38% from 3 on the best defense of his season. And that's really when the Celtics took it to a whole other gear, and they're 14 games ahead of the second seed. I just think that level of dominance had to be something that was 100% rewarded. A guy that's not on my list that I wanted to fight for but couldn't, Zion Williamson. I felt like towards the end of the season, we started really seeing the best of Zion, but his up and down is dating back to the first in-season tournament towards the end of the season. you really saw the growth and the maturity of him to have his most available season. Unfortunately, it got ruined in the play-in where he had literally 40 and 11.
Yeah.
Tough, but yeah.
Yeah, being the team and him being hamstrung in the last game is brutal. Yeah, I'll give Williamson a ton of credit as far as figuring it out. I would say around midseason and having a really good stretch. Then, of course, BI goes down for near the end of the season, so the team doesn't have the same winning success. But Zion was clearly putting it together and looking good. I think I didn't consider him this time around because he had such a slow start.
It was very slow.
And
yeah.
Look, and it really doesn't even refer to being in shape. That's a factor, obviously, for his own health and availability. But I think the attitude and the willingness to adapt were not there early in the season for too long a stretch for my liking. I know he had off the court issues as far as like dealing with unnecessary drama and life stuff as every human does. So I'm sure that was a factor as far as, you know, maybe his appearance or the behavior he was giving off. But I just still am left so unsatisfied with his defense. I think that's just one thing that has not grown nearly enough. The rebounding, also not there. I understand Valanciunas is on this team, but for a guy that's got the clearest comparison to Charles Barkley we've seen since Barkley himself,
he doesn't get rebounding.
He just should be a far better rebounder than what he is. So that's ultimately disappointing. And like to your point about the availability, like the second half of the season was good, and I think we're really seeing the potential once again. That's what made the injury all the more frustrating. So I hope for a quick rehab, a healthy offseason, and then just come ready to go the start of next year, because the team will look different. I think Zion will still be a member of the Pelicans, but man, if he has a just give me the 65-ish games and just give me the stretch that I know you can go on, and it'll be great, because he can do so much.
So much.
Like Gifted, he could easily be a top 10 player next season. I firmly believe that. Easily could be a top 10 player next season. But he needs to be available, and he needs to buy in 100% of the time. Mentally and physically buy in, and, you know, the world's your oyster. Like, it's just that easy. So I believe we're going to see stretches of that. I just hope he can be on the court to do it.
I think if BI is traded next year, I think the weight on Zion's shoulders are going to be a lot higher. And I would expect him, even though he got injured, I don't think it was like a severe wait time. It was just way too long for the playoffs. So I do think that for the majority of this offseason, he should be able to continue to build on the good habits that got him to losing weight during the season, and just get in the best shape possible to really have his best year next year. Because as good as he was this year, I still feel like his best season was his second year, where he was like one of the best paint scorers we've ever seen. Like 64% from the field, flat. No true shooting, just flat from the field, not settling, get into the paint. Like that Zion is what puts the fear into a lot of these teams. So I do want to give him credit. But the last thing I want to note here with Victor Wembanyama, which was like so intriguing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
These are his pre-All-Star splits. 28 minutes per game, 20.5 points per game, 46 from the field, 32% from three, 10 rebounds a game, 3 assists, 3.2 blocks a game. Rookie player. Right? Now,
it's pre-All-Star.
He did all that in 28 minutes. Post All-Star break, in 22 games played, 32 minutes a game, 23 and a half points per game, so almost 24 points per game, 45% from the field, 33% from three on 7 threes a game, 76.9 from the free throw line, 12 rebounds a game, 5.3 assists, and then he averaged 4.5 blocks. That's post All-Star break.
What? Yeah, 24, 12, 5, and 4 is otherworldly. Yeah, he's beyond good. He's yeah, I think Wemby is. I mean, it's an understatement. The most exciting thing in the league by far.
Yes.
The Spurs with the lottery gods on their side. Yeah, they're going to be so good, man. I look forward to this offseason. I hope they don't. We've talked about this, off pod or at least in different episodes. I do not want them to go for the big splash. I want them to just let the natural development happen. Shore up some spots. Please, get a point guard that is on the court most of the time that can run an offense. That would be nice. But Wemby's just going to progress and I think look more efficient. Even if those numbers don't shoot up, I'm not nervous because those numbers are already incredible. But Wemby will progress, and I expect Devin Vassell to be a 20-point per game scorer quite easily next season on good efficiency. Would not be surprised if he's a 25-5 guy. And I think you would actually make that comparison. He's, the Chris Middleton to Wemby's Giannis. That's what I foresee for them. I think they're going to be really good. And, well, let me put this. Both individually be really good. The team will probably still stink, and that's okay. But, yeah, man, beyond exciting. And, the temptation was there. He's already a DPOY candidate. Would not be completely surprised if he is a firm second place. But, yeah, we'll wait and see, man. It's been a good season, even better playoffs.
Yeah. Can't wait to see what this looks like. We will be spinning the block for our all defensive teams, which I can't wait to get into those. But overall, yes, pretty solid all NBA teams. Y'all can let us know where you guys agree or disagree. I'll be clipping out some parts so we can really get the conversation going about our third teams and whatnot, which are going to definitely come under some fire there. But
yeah, I'm ready. That's fine. It's all good.
Yeah.
I was roasting myself for this one. So yeah, roast away.
Yeah. Well, appreciate basketball. We got some great playoffs coming up again. In Minnesota versus Denver is coming up pretty soon. I can't wait for that. So I'm excited, but we'll catch you guys. Peace out, everyone. Have a good one. Make sure this happens to the Not Judgeable podcast. Links and all that will be in the description box below. Peace.
Peace.